All right, good afternoon. Happy Thanksgiving Eve, Florida Panthers fans. Welcome back to another edition of Five on the Ice. I'm David Eversole, of course, joined as always by our lead Panthers correspondent, Alex Baumgartner. Make sure to follow him at Baumgartner91. Big game for the Cats tonight, I feel like. To try to get some momentum back, you can see there on the crawl, the Cats have lost four straight, are 4-6 in their last 10 overall. And after tonight, the Panthers are going to have 8 out of their next 10 games on the road. So I feel like this is a game where they kind of need to get right a little bit. So I've been going through some of the advanced stats, but Alex has been there today. He was at practice and want to bring you the latest news on the team surrounding them before this game tonight at Toronto. So, Alex, what's the latest, brother?
Yeah, so obviously the Panthers have lost four straight and six of their last seven. This is their worst stretch of the year. If you remember last year, they had a similar stretch like that. Paul Maurice actually thinks they played a little worse over that, what we call a 12-game extended stretch. I would have to agree. This is the bounce back game. You're playing against a former playoff opponent in the Leafs. They usually play pretty good games against former playoff opponents, like against Boston, like against New York. They've had good games against Carolina, and obviously every game against the Leaf. Pretty hard hitting, a lot of skill, very fast game. So this is definitely a game where the Panthers are going to need to bounce back in. They had a tough one against Washington, losing 4-1 after two empty netters. They had a pretty bad game against Colorado. I think that was the worst one out of this stretch. It's a terrible second period. So they need to bounce back, and they need to do it quick because you're hitting the road soon, and it's a 4-point swing. Toronto's ahead of you in the division. I know it's early in the season, but these things come down to 1 to 2 points. A 4-point swing right now is crucial for the Panthers. So as an evaluator, I don't necessarily think too much about regular season hockey until we get into slumps and big 4-point swings like we have tonight. This is definitely a wake-up call, and the Panthers need to answer the bell because Toronto's not going to sit back and let them have their way at home.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, Alex. I was looking at some of the NHL Edge stats, which, if you guys haven't gone there, it's got some really cool advanced analytics on the Panthers. And to me, it seems like the team is a step slow.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that has a factor in the last two seasons, obviously playing more hockey than anybody else? I mean, if you look at, there's some interesting numbers here. If you look at 22 plus mile per hour bursts, the league average is 21. The Cats only have 8 all season. It seems like they're just not quite moving the puck through the neutral zone with much speed. And obviously, they're having some defensive lapses as well on the back check. So, do you think there's any just of a little bit of a hangover just from the sheer amount of hockey that they've played over the last two seasons?
It could be a possibility, but I think it's more of them just getting away from their game rather than their legs. Yeah, obviously the legs, there's not a lot of juice there the last couple of weeks, but they're also straying away from makes them such a good team, which is dumping the puck and then getting aggressive on the forecheck. And they started to do that against Washington, and you started getting pissed off players. Like Matthew Tkachuk was very pissed off that game. Alexander Barkov was playing a lot more physical than I've seen him all season, throwing cross checks, trying to drag opponents into the bench. I mean, it's clearly a frustrated team, and they just need to get back to what makes their brand of hockey so successful, which is grinding out in the corners, getting pucks deep. They're not a team that thrives off of those neutral zone entry, quick shot off the rush. A couple years ago when they're under Andrew Brunette, yeah, that's where all their offense was coming from. When Paul Maurice took over and they established what their game was going to be, it wasn't that. It was locking it down low, winning tight 2-1, 3-2 games, and they just haven't been able to sustain that play the last couple of weeks. And they started the season somewhat doing that. So that might be the cause for concern. I don't know if that has to do with a cup hangover or if it has to do with them, just like in an 82 game season, you kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think that's more like it. It won't surprise me once they get that next, win where they get to stick to their game. They start getting back to that. Obviously, the legs are going to be a little tired, the amount of hockey they played, but I don't think that's substantial enough with the way these guys prepare their bodies in the off season, the way they train all year. They're all in great shape. and it's a young team. It's not a team with a bunch of old guys. They should
Yeah.
be able to keep their legs the whole year.
Yeah, and I feel like they've had just some defensive letdowns, and that's showing in some of the statistics. They're 27th in goals against average, 24th in save percentage right now. I just feel like, like you said, they're used to those little bit tighter games. I just feel like some of the execution is lacking, especially in the defensive zone. And teams are kind of establishing their forecheck and imposing their will on the Panthers, which is not something that you've typically seen over the last 2 years. It's usually been the Panthers, kind of like you said, playing their game, imposing their will, grinding it out, winning the battles on the corners and the dasher, getting the pucks on goal. The offense, I don't think has been the problem. I just feel like it's one or two key lapses, within a given period that have sort of set the team behind. But I feel like tonight is one of those games that they look at. They're like, all right, they have a home and home or an away and home after Thanksgiving Friday with Carolina, Friday, Saturday. So
Yeah.
I feel like for them to get off to a good start tonight, take care of business on the home ice on what should be a good crowd. A lot of people out of work. I think it's going to be a good crowd. Toronto always draws well, obviously. So hopefully they can feed off of that, get a little bit more energy, a little bit more Christmas. Like you mentioned, Paul Maurice has lit a fire under them. So I feel like we're going to hopefully see a little bit more just of an inspired, clean team tonight. That's what I'm looking for, is just to be crisp in your own zone, clean breakouts, tape-to-tape passes, and establishing that forecheck, as you mentioned.
Look, if you can't wake up for a Leafs Panthers game after the last couple years, there's no point showing up to the rink. The Leafs are going to be needing to get ready to go. The Panthers are going to need to be ready to go. There's no Austin Matthews for Toronto once again. He has been skating. He did skate today, but he's not playing tonight. Anthony Stollart's projected starter, not confirmed. Him, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Steven Lorentz all make their return to Sunrise. They're the first batch of Panthers from last year's Cup team that departed to return to Sunrise. They all got their rings today. We had an opportunity to talk to Ekman-Larsson and Lorentz after practice. They were very happy to receive their rings and see their old teammates. So that should be a good one. The fans should enjoy, giving them a little bit of a applause. The Panthers fans do love their old players, especially that Cup team. So there's going to be a little bit of emotion riding into this one, but obviously when the puck drops, it's game time. These are two Atlantic Division rivals, and both teams want that 4-point swing. And as we mentioned for Florida, I mean, you gotta start stringing some wins sooner than later, especially now that you're hitting the road for a game against Carolina after. Get the holiday break off to a good start. So they're going to need to come out and bring their A game against probably their former backup goalie.
Yeah, and obviously I think we're gonna have Bob in net tonight, so
Bob
hopefully he can lock in. They can tighten up a little bit on the blue line, and the Cats can get a victory. So, any other key points in this game before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I said no Austin Matthews, but the Leafs have more than enough talent across the board with Nylander, Marner, Tavares. They got a pretty good blue line too, and obviously Stollart's been playing really well. It's just what I think. They need to get back to their game. And Toronto and Florida play kind of similar games. Maurice kind of noted that. They're two teams that are very stylistically similar in some sense. So it should be a good one. I don't expect a runaway game from either team tonight, and it should be a good one for both sides.
Yeah, hopefully we can get a close victory, and we'll take some momentum on the road. So 8 out of the next 10 on the road, as we mentioned. After tonight, they'll have a away game at Carolina Friday, then back here in Sunrise for Carolina on Saturday. And then they have a pretty good stretch on the road after that. So we're going to be back after the holiday with some more coverage. And make sure to follow Alex for all the latest Panthers news. And throughout the network as well, we'll have continuing updates. So want to thank everybody for watching. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.